mental health, psychology, waking up, all these different things with all sorts of people, whether it's motivational speakers or celebrity chefs or professional athletes. I'm all just about, sitting down with my fellow human and trying to have just a legit conversation around the truth and around, any other values that person has. So, I do that in so many different ways, but.
Yes, you do. And so you have a podcast and it's called Human 2.0. And where, first of all, like, who did you sit down with and was like, you know what? We should name the podcast Human 2.0.
Nobody. So the way that it happened was, so like in 2015, 2016 in my life, not too long ago, I was in a pretty rough spot in my life. It was really probably like the first time maybe I would consider myself depressed. I was just sort of coming to light of a lot of the things just in my past, in my life, and I kind of just saw like two different paths in front of me of like I could just keep on doing the same thing that society has an invisible script for me to do, but deep down I know this is literally going to burn me from the inside out in a bad way. And then I saw this other path of like, I could be doing way better, way more. Always kind of considered myself like kind of future oriented, and so I was like, I could definitely kind of do things. And so when I sort of was initially faced with that choice, that can be really scary. And so for me, I try to, really just like run away from that with, doing things that just like I'm just not interested in, like whether it was. I'm not saying these things are inherently bad, but things like partying. I would basically just binge Netflix after I'd come home from class. I would just eat a ton of food. Didn't really hang out with anybody. Really just tried to like escape and shut the real voice out through those vices. And then eventually got to a point where I really didn't know what to do with my life. Which kind of got me to like kind of having a dark night of the soul where I was able to you really just get access to who I really am. And so that kind of like started this massive journey of me just like blowing up my life, me trying to change everything about it. At first, it started with me just becoming aware that I was really socially anxious. So then I tried to fight that, and then it led on to me to understand that there's much deeper problems at hand, and it really just led me to a journey of like my own empowerment, getting my physical, my mental health together, my getting in touch with my spirituality and my reason for being here on planet Earth. And then it got to that point where maybe like in the middle of 2017, I was just kind of looking at my life and who I used to be, and I was just like, damn, like the person who I used to be is completely different in a good way to who I am today after just like doing these things after like a year. And it's like, if I did it, literally anybody could do it. And so that began a starting point of me just like creating this model of like, I come from a computer science background, and it's kind of like software of how there's like a version 1.0 edition, but then it's like, wait, I saw myself totally normal dude go and be able to do what he actually wants to do with his life, and I'm not special, I'm just like everybody else. And so if I could do it, literally everybody could do version 2.0. So it was from that. And then all those interviews were just basically stories. They were basically examples, right? Because not everybody's going to relate to me, but somebody is probably going to relate to like the 290th person I've interviewed, whether it's like their background or like their family or their religion or their culture. They're going to have some kind of an example of like somebody who was just like them that looked this certain way or talked this certain way, and then they found a way to finally kind of live their own life. So that was the whole premise behind it.
Well, let's definitely unpack that from the beginning, right? So, first and foremost, you mentioned having social anxiety and, depression, which you speak on regularly, but is a topic that isn't large in your Egyptian background. So it's coming from what your background is and being able. So my first question is, did you have a therapist?
I do have a therapist.
Present day.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean, so it's interesting. People always ask me this question, and I want to go to what you said about the Egyptian part because I think that's super fascinating. But yeah, I mean, when I first started, I like when I kind of found myself at kind of like my lowest point. I didn't really know what the hell was going on. I'd never heard of these words, mental health, didn't really understand them. So then I went and I sought professional help. And at first, didn't really work out because I walk in and, the doctor has me list things that I'm feeling. First thing that he goes to basically tell me to do is like I should be on some kind of a anti-anxiety or antipsychotic medication. And then I basically just Googled it, did my own research, and I was like, this is not for me. I'm not going to take this. And just a fine line is I'm not saying these things are, bad by any means. I think it's a tool, and just like any tool, it more or less has to do with, the user.
Mm-hmm.
So I just decided to not opt for that. But therapy, whether in the conventional sense of actually going to a therapist or having a trusted friend that knows how to communicate a conversation and ask you questions, because that's really what all therapy is. I think that is essential to what makes us human, and is essential for just teaching the logical and the emotional part of your brain to connect rather than be segmented, which gets people on these weird behavior paths. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. How did your parents feel about that? Because you're first generation here, born in this country, but your parents came about 5 or 6 years prior to you being born, so they were like really embedded in the culture. And I also want to talk about religion, like, because you said you tapped into your spirituality. So how did that play out for you? Because I know as a Black female, do Egyptians consider themselves Black? Y'all are Black, but do you consider yourself Black?
I don't know. It's funny because I know if you look at like the U.S. government standards, the U.S. consensus, technically we're white. Mm-hmm. North African is considered Caucasian, mm-hmm. which is pretty interesting. So I don't even know if I consider myself Black or not. I don't even think about that. But so those are so many interesting questions. So so my parents, they came to America like literally 2 years before I was born. Mm-hmm. So they were like coming in hot to a culture they had no idea, and they're having another baby, right? And so in terms of maybe like the whole mental health talk, it just didn't really exist. I never, heard my parents or let alone anybody their age kind of talk about these things.
Is there a word in, what do Egyptians speak?
Arabic.
Yeah. Is there a word in Arabic for like mental health or therapist, or is that like one of the words you have to translate into English and then go back to Arabic?
So I'm not 100% aware of the words, but they're mostly like negative words, right? It's mostly like if like somebody, I could be wrong, but like the translation for mental illness is basically somebody who, like in today's words, is like retarded.
Oh.
Yeah. So so again, I think a big reason why it is what I'm doing today is what I grew up and not seeing. Mm-hmm. This concept of like, if somebody is, let's say, mentally unhealthy, then they'll just kind of like say like, oh, she's just not having a good day today or something like that. Mm-hmm. Someone to kind of just play it down. And yeah, I think when I look at countries, obviously every country and every region in the world has its issues and they need help with. Middle East specifically needs a lot of help in the, mental health department. If you look at it, has some of like the highest rates of mental health within like a given general population. Mm-hmm. And I definitely think that has to do with people just not talking about it. People just trying to live life as if like they don't have it, or even here in America where like people think like, oh yeah, this word mental health, it's like you either you have it or you don't. Mm-hmm. Like when people think about it, it's like, does that mean I'm like diagnosed with autism or Down syndrome, or does it just mean the same way that we think of like physical health, of like what's your physical health shape of like how does your heart beat when you mm-hmm. push it, how long can you stand up for it? That's the sort of conversation that I'm trying to bring towards into mental health, mm-hmm. because I think it applies to everybody. And it's like, even if you don't necessarily struggle with mental health issues because of you were blessed with like some genetics, or you had great parents that taught you a lot of things, but you neglect certain things in your life, you could be like 65 and come down with some kind of mental health issue. So I'm just trying to bring that to the table, and it's super cool to see that like my podcast, specifically in like Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Dubai, it's like ranked like top 10 in mental health. So like that's pretty cool.
That's beautiful. Yeah. Actually, for you, literally breaking barriers and opening doors for people who wouldn't otherwise have those conversations.
Yeah, for sure. And a lot of people reach out to me, just all over the world. And I often find that, specifically probably more girls than guys, although guys are definitely affected just in a different way. More girls I get contacted to that are living in like Morocco or someplace in the Middle East. They're like, they message me like, dude, what, like, I just listened to this podcast episode that you have, and I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, I've never heard any of these ideas before.
Concepts are completely out of the norm for the region. So
and it's so interesting. Like, once you get somebody like that, and they start to actually take it seriously, it's like their entire life literally just falls apart in front of their eyes at the beginning, that they might perceive in a good or bad way. But then after that, it's like there's like and obviously it's not overnight, but there's like a cleanse of just realizing that like, wow, I used to walk life in this way with all these unconscious, invisible things that were ruling my life, but I just didn't know, whether it was somebody else or the way they talked or the way I let them affect me when I heard them say something that I didn't like. And it's just, it's super rewarding. And right now I'm trying to, I've gotten more serious about speaking and stuff. And I have nothing confirmed yet, but I'm trying to make my way to speak over there in the Middle East too.
Awesome. Well, when two or more touch and agree, there he will be. So I'm speaking that into existence for you. As far as religion, I know here in America, when it comes to, and I can only speak to my experience, but when it comes to like Black Americans or West Indians or Islanders, it's like pray your way through it. Do you believe or feel that the Egyptian culture or the North, so I don't like to say the Middle East because it's really the African tectonic plate, so it's still Africa. So do you think that it's more so of a religious thing where it's like, just pray about it and all of the worries, Allah or God? What is the religion for you, and then specifically for the region?
Yeah, so for specifically the region, predominantly Islamic. So my parents are not. My parents belong in, I think, like an 8% minority that is Coptic Orthodox Christian. Speaking of unorthodox, that's the kind of Christianity that like kind of stems way back.
That's like Jesus with a halo over his head, right?
Yeah.
Orthodox,
that like stems back to like literally the origin roots of Christianity and Judaism. But so it's so interesting, right? So I grew up like that, and used to go to church every week. But for the most part, I probably considered myself, without thinking about it, probably atheist. I just didn't believe in it, didn't really get it. Although I grew up and I was heavily ingrained in it the entire time. And probably got me to a point where I was like, towards the end of 2015, where I was at a point like suicidal in my life. And I finally kind of got quiet. And I kind of felt like I got access to a voice that was much deeper in my life, that has always been there, but I just never heard. And so when I sort of gained access to that, that's where I was just like, oh shit, like, like I could be wrong. Like there could definitely be something more powerful, more just deeper than like just the everyday that like reality that we always run into. And so after that point, I was like, damn, I need to just rethink this whole sort of dynamic. And, to me, in terms of what you said about like, prayer and things like that. So I think there's two sides of it. I think the one side is, obviously, I think that if you, sit in a room, by yourself for 6 hours and you pray about something happening, it depends, right? So if that's all you're doing, probably not. And I think what prayer really is just you trying to speak something into existence, whether you're talking to God or whether you're not. And I think that could work both ways, like in a good way and in a bad way. Like you could bring bad things into your life, into reality, by just constantly focusing your thoughts on them. And then the same goes with the good. But I also do think that you need to do, obviously, way more than just pray about things. You know, when I look at my life, I didn't just, pray about them. Sure, maybe I did or I didn't pray about them, but then I would actually, do them, and I would actually keep trying to go for it. And even though, I would, face some kind of resistance or some kind of an obstacle, I wouldn't, stop and be like, oh, I guess God doesn't want me to be this. And I honestly feel like a lot of people, are sort of like misinterpreting the whole like I feel like a lot of, obviously not everyone, but I feel like a lot of people who are very dominant in that community are often
Christianity community.
Yeah, are often
or just religion as a whole.
Religion as a whole, and honestly, it doesn't even have to be religion. It can be any kind of belief system, whether that's politics or something else. I honestly feel like people are kind of they're almost like using God. Like they're using God in the sense of like, hey, if I try this but it doesn't work out, then it's
God, you didn't want me to do it.
Exactly. And it's like, no, that's BS. I mean, maybe there is a degree to truth, but then, however, the other side of that is like, I went to Egypt in 2016, and that country was like just getting out of a revolution, like multiple like dictators, some people that could have swung the country in a really negative direction, but they got out of it. And so I just, went there, and you really just sort of see the simplicity of it. And like I remember I kept on hearing this phrase. It wasn't pray about it, but it was something like
can you say it in Arabic?
Yeah, I think it's like Rabbina Yabarak, which basically means God's got it. And essentially the meaning that I got from that is like their country was in just so much turmoil and uncertainty.
They're like, oh, God's got it.
Yeah, exactly. like and again, like you see this in like a lot of countries where things are not super developed, where like you literally need to have a level of faith, whether it's in God or just the universe, that things are going to work out. Because it's like when you're driving, and then you look to your right and you see a motorcycle, and there's literally 5 people on the motorcycle. They're like strapped on. It's like, yeah, God's definitely got to go there, or else everyone's going to have a panic attack. So it's like, there's two sides to that. But yeah, it's an interesting question. I'm glad you asked.
Oh, Mark, that means everything, since you're the one that interviews celebrities on a daily basis. So you have been to Egypt. You do want to go back overseas to Northern Africa, not the Middle East, to speak and kind of like encourage and open doors. And actually, you're shattering belief systems and changing paradigms. And so you're that's really a big deal to alter a region's thought process. Have you ever like took yourself outside of the now and thought about what you're actually doing as far as like being a change maker in a region of a country that they despise change?
Yeah. So, yeah, I not try to think about it every day, but I think it's definitely important because, I think you can get super caught up in, just like the day-to-day of things working. And I think, when you're at a position, not that I'm at, it sounds so weird. When you're at
let's be honest. Yeah. You are in a position, Mark. So if no one's going to stroke your ego, I'm going to stroke you. Okay? You are in a position that many... So you're under 25. Are you 23?
22.
22? You're not 23 yet. So being the age that you are, surrounded around the influence and level of wisdom that you are, and the people that have actual big names and deep pockets, you literally are in the room where it happens. So
yes.
I want you, like, moving forward, I'm going to need for you to own your power.
Yeah.
Because you have some.
Definitely.
And I want you to own it. But being in those rooms and having that sphere of influence, and then being able to not have a swollen head about it, and to transfer that power to the people that follow, or to the people that appreciate listening to you. You're not there yet, right? You're like, I just make videos.
No. So to be self true. So I totally get it. Like, in one part of my mind, I completely know that, like, maybe in 50 years from now, I'm gonna go down, no doubt, in history as like one of the all-time. Like, I have no doubt about it. But I also know that the true sign of success is being humble. Because when you're humble, like, I don't need anything from anybody. I don't want somebody to think I'm so great. And oftentimes, as a 22-year-old, and I begin to talk about kind of like these deeper, heavy subjects, and I maybe maybe come off based on how that person perceived me as confident or whatever. I definitely don't want to give off the vibe of, like, I'm like this 22-year-old life coach, and I help people because I know the kinds of problems that people go through. And even though people have much more complicated and deeper issues, but it's not a comparison. It's not a game for us to compare each other with. But when I kind of take myself out of the equation, I look back, I mean, it's literally unfathomable, because I think, I see, like, the direct numbers of, like, my podcast is listened to by this many people, my post on social media, this, like, there's a legitimate number.
Let's give those real numbers.
So, I mean, my podcast has been listened to over like 10 million times. Social media, I have no idea. I think last time is up of like 25 million just on like LinkedIn alone. And I think the big thing about it that I've taken away is, like, I'll get like those measurable numbers, but there's also an insane amount of people that either saw my post or saw my podcast but didn't like it or didn't send me a message, because but they might still be struggling with it. They might have still listened to my podcast and gained some stuff about it. So, like, I get messages all the time of, like, people in, like, the craziest areas, or just like in my neighborhood, of, like, I grew up, when I first got to America, I grew up in Lawrence, and I got a message like 2 weeks ago from somebody. I was like, hey, dude, I'm from Lawrence, and my whole life, people, like, my teachers tell me I'd grow up to be a drug dealer and this and that, but you literally came from there. And so it's like changing what I think I can do in life. So, like, there's very specific messages like that. But it's like, I know it's like, I can't even comprehend it. Like, I can't even actually think and break it down, because it's insane. And so, I know it's just started.
Let's give the listeners and the viewers a quick timeline. So,
sure, yeah.
You were playing video, and how did that? First of all, Mark, before people were watching kids play video games, you were that kid playing the video game.
Yeah.
So, why were you playing video games? It was just like, oh, somebody might want to watch me play. Like, where did that start?
Yeah. So timeline-wise, I was born in 1997, and probably by the time I was like, in terms of significant events, in terms of like time I was in like second, third grade, so maybe I was like, I don't even know how old I was, like maybe 8 or 9 or 10. Switched schools a lot of time. My parents moved a lot because of jobs and whatnot. And so, a big part of it is just because I didn't have any friends. It's because I was very socially anxious. And so that was just my coping mechanism, right? Some people, they cut themselves. Some people, they, drink alcohol. Some people, they join the baseball team and, try to prove their dad that they're the best or whatever. Like, everyone has different coping mechanism. And so that was it. Like, I was lonely. I didn't have friends. I didn't know how to express myself. So I was like, hey, let me go live inside this virtual world of playing a video game. And then after a while, you start to, make virtual friends and things like that. And then it becomes like, hey, I want everyone to know about this. I want to share it. And it's crazy, because I think in a lot of ways, what I was doing then is very much the same what I'm doing now. Because, like, the reason why I would like record myself playing video games and then put them up on YouTube was because I was the best person at playing like this video game out of my friends. So I was like, hey, I'm going to teach the world how to get better at this video game. So it's kind of like the same thing that I'm doing now, but just in different ways. So yeah, so I really kind of use that as a escape coping mechanism to just deal with life. And then probably by the time I was like 15, I had I started like this Minecraft server.
What does that mean?
Yeah, so it's just like
for us older people. That's just like
yeah.
I know my kids play Minecraft. I don't know what the game is. I don't know the premise of it. I don't. And then a server is just like, is that like the AOL ding ding? Like, what is that?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's interesting. So yeah, so anytime you play multiplayer on anything, so like you play a game or even like a live stream or something, and there's two people on, they're like you're joining something, you're joining a computer, you're joining a connection, and so you need a server to do that. So like when you go on Google.com, when you type in Google, Google's redirecting you to their server, and that redirects you to another website server of the result you end up clicking on. So long story short, I don't know why I just said that. Long story short, it's basically like where you can join with somebody else to like play a game and have fun.
And at 15, you created your own.
Yeah, so sort of didn't really think of anything of it. Just kind of like Googled my way on how to do it. Long story short, it becomes the world's #1 Minecraft server. I started making hundreds of thousands of dollars when I was like 15, 16. It was like probably like my first big like entrepreneurial success before I even knew what any of those words meant.
Babe, you do know that at 15 you were making more than like 60% of Americans.
I think more. More than 60%. But like here's the really interesting thing. It's like so like the framework that I was growing up on at that time was like, because I never came from money at all. My parents didn't have any. Never probably had more than like $20 in my hand at once. The whole framework that I had at that time was like the concept of the American dream, of like, you basically just do what you're told. You go on this path, whether it's school or college, you get a degree, you get this kind of qualification, and then you work your way, you join a corporation, you work a job, and then you work your way up that job, and then eventually, you make 6 figures as an executive or doing something like that. And so when I reached that, literally in high school, I was like, oh shit, like this is
this is really real.
Yeah, and I was like, this is like I've just been fed a lie, and like I'm not happy. I'm still the same old loser that I always was. I don't feel anything within myself. I don't really have any friends. And so when that happened, it actually got me way more confused, and actually sort of like it actually was like the catalyst of like how I got depressed and a lot of those things, because it's like at that time when you're 15, 16, you start making money, and you're not like I wasn't doing something I hated. Like I was literally working for myself, doing something that I love doing, that I'd probably do for free either way, and all of a sudden you start making money from it. A lot of people that don't have that, they think that's like an ideal, like perfect fantasy scenario. But it's like if you haven't dealt with a lot of those deeper things within you that have pushed you to be able to do those successful things,
it shines more light on the deficits in your life.
100%. And then when that happens, then you are really in pain, because you're like, oh crap. At least when I had these problems, I was sort of like working towards a path that I thought I'd get a solution. But then you get there, and if you don't know anything else, then you start to become hopeless. And then when you're hopeless, then you get nihilistic about life, and you hate everybody and you hate everything, and you're like, there's no point to this existence. And then when that happens, then you get people that do crazy things, whether it's go shoot up a mall or go kill themselves. So it's like I kind of went through those things, and it eventually got me to that point where I was like, oh crap, like this is not the point of life, and I need to go on this whole other path of admitting that first off I don't know anything, and then I need to learn, and I need to sort of not necessarily find myself, but I need to create myself.
Hold on, I want you to say that again, because I think that was an excellent, like I love that, and I would love to hear that on your next podcast.
Yeah, I mean, so I just said, so I think life is not about finding yourself. I think life is about creating yourself, because I think a lot of the times, like we can get so caught up in like, oh, I don't know what I'm supposed to do, or I'm supposed to do this and that. But it's like when I look back at everything that I've done, like literally almost nothing I've done felt natural, like at all. Nothing. Like when I was starting my Minecraft server, or like when I was making my YouTube channel, when I was starting like my first business, when I was starting my podcast, none of these things seemed like totally natural for me. None of these things seemed like, the universe, like, I just woke up one day and I was like, oh my God, like I've been I've been given the prophecy. It was all just a matter of literally just like small little moments where I took my own free individual will in a moment and I just use that freedom to just do something. And then it's like after you do something, after you create something, and like let's say it's like a physical thing, whether it's like music or podcasting or I don't know, drawing or writing or something like that, after you have like a tangible thing in the world, you're then able to kind of like look back at that and you're like, oh wow, I created this because I was trying to pull like this piece out of it, and I actually just sort of created myself. And that's what I think life is all about. And like the reason why I say that is like so many people feel like they're not supposed to feel like that. So many people think they're supposed to be given like
that
a map.
aha moment.
Yeah, like an aha moment, like a map that says, "Oh, I gotta do this, and then I'll do that, and then then I'll get over here." It's like no, life is very much a compass. Like you're like, "Oh crap! Oh wait, let me go over here. Let me go over here. Let me go over here." And it's like then you're gonna be like, "Wait, should I really go over there?" So then, it's interesting. But I think ultimately moving towards your fears and moving towards your own sort of like self-evolution, and then also how you kind of fit in the bigger context of in the world of how you can actually be of service to other people. I think that's like a good little like recipe formula. But
Have you been able, so 15 years old, hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, playing video games, creating servers, were you able to then, or are you now able to retire your parents?
So the first side, that's a great question. So I mean, I've actually I've actually talked to my parents about this. So I remember when I was younger, and I started making that money, definitely helped pay them like with rent, all those different things, helped them out a lot. Today, my parents still work, and they don't want to retire. They both do things that they enjoy, but they have that security that maybe not retire in like Beverly Hills or not yet, but they could definitely get by without working another day. But it's it's interesting. It's super interesting because there's like the whole different kinds of not positions, but my parents have always been chill people. But yeah, they're not trying to retire.
So what did you spend your money on at 15? Just software? Was it just software and computers?
No, who pays for software?
I need Mark in my life.
Yeah, so it was crazy, right? So obviously I didn't really, some of the things I spend them on good things, but a lot of times I didn't have any idea what money was, didn't know how to deal with it. So I was just spending it like left and right. Nothing like too crazy, nothing like too like big blowout purchases or anything like that. Probably one of the biggest things I did with the money, other than like kind of support my parents and some friends and people like that kind of needed help, was I literally remember my server, we literally donated everything. All the money.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, because I was at a point where I'm like, I'm not about to put this in a fund or something. So we literally just donated all of it to a charity. And
you want to name the charity?
Yeah, water.org.
I love you. I F's with you, Mark, because
Thanks.
That's a whole nother topic for another day, because I have other questions. But a lot of people don't understand how water is liquid gold. And there's a documentary actually called Blue Gold that came out years ago that really opened my eyes to the water deficit that is taking place in other countries that we may not feel here, but is a global issue, along with sanitation. And people don't think of sanitation as hand in hand with water. But a lot of the diseases globally are because of sanitation and lack of clean water.
Yeah.
And so I have so much more respect for you now than I ever did before. And so I think that's dope. And do you currently donate to water now, or what are your philanthropic aspirations, or what do you engage in today?
Yeah, that's a great question. So definitely not as much as I should, for sure. But I try my best. So like, I remember on my birthday on July, just last July, I was basically like, I made a LinkedIn video about it, and I was like, hey guys, for my birthday, we're gonna meet up in Boston Common, and I'm gonna buy all the supplies, all the food. We basically made like these mini care packages for homeless people, and then we just we met up. Like I went up with people that listen to my podcast, and we just spent the day just giving them out to everybody.
You
Still
gonna do
not
that
a
next
big,
year?
yeah, or maybe hopefully turn it up a stage or turn it up a notch, which is obviously not that's not like a long-term solution. But it was pretty fun to kind of combine forces with people and get things going. Literally today, I'm going to this dinner at 6:00 that I organized, and it's basically like pretty small, like 11 people in total. Basically just get to go out to dinner with me, and I was basically like, hey, if you want to come, you have to buy a ticket, and that ticket price is going to go to the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention.
Wow.
So like, each person ended up doing like $50, and 10 people, you know what I mean? So it's like, I'm trying to work my best way to do that. But yeah, and to be totally honest, like I've tried starting like a nonprofit, failed horribly, like literally late end of 2017, 2018. So I'm just, at this point in my life, I'm just like not trying to put it off. But I'm
actually just figure it out.
Yeah,
it sounds like you're just trying to figure it out and not really putting it off. And if I can throw something out there for you, maybe you'll catch like something surrounded around mental health in Northern Africa, or like so forgive me if my American ignorance shines through in this comment, but
sure.
When it comes to like the Islamic beliefs, religion, I feel as if women are oppressed. So maybe
100%.
Okay, so it's not my complete ignorance. So maybe something around I don't know if I'm trying to make up words in my head now. But like eradicating oppression of females in Islamic states, or something like that. I feel like you're able to be that bridge that currently doesn't exist,
right,
when it comes to the belief system. And from what I've read, like it's getting better, but they definitely need some help.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and I'm no expert in Islam or the Quran or whatever, and I have a lot of Muslim friends that I respect, and are great people, and they have great families, and they have great love for like their mom and things like that. But yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you. Like, I don't think you can really, like, you can not agree with what you just said when an extremely rich country by the name of Saudi Arabia just enabled women to drive like a couple of years ago.
Yes.
Which is literally crazy. So yeah, I mean, I'm definitely trying to sort of be, I don't know if it's for that specific bridge, but I mean, yeah, I mean, when you look at like women's mental health, and not even the Middle East, and just, there's, and again, we're not perfect here in America or in other developed countries, but it's like, you look at women's mental health in non-developed countries, like in India and all these places, like it's like beyond horrible. It's like beyond horrible, and I don't even know how we would even solve that, other than the fact of like, to me, when I look at the world, I see everything in terms of like mental health and self-development. And what I mean is like, whether you're looking at a president, or you're looking at a CEO of a company, or you're looking at the janitor, or you're looking at an author or a speaker or a senator or a teacher, every single one of those people is a human. And every single one of those humans has different aspects that make up their lives, their physical health, their spirituality, their mental health. And so it's like, for me, what I really began to realize is like, I remember when I first got started on my journey and my mission, I was basically just trying to scream my message from the rooftops. And like everyone I'd run into, I'd be like, yo, this, and that.
Mm-hmm.
You got to do this. You can't do, things like that. But then the more I just understood human nature, the more I understood is like, you can't actually change people by telling them what to do. I think the way that you can help somebody change that you love is by being a living, breathing example of that, and then them seeing your actions, and then them being inspired to change themselves. So kind of working your way out through concentric circles. I think that's the best model, and like that's the best success that I've gotten. And so it's like that at like a meta level, that's what I sort of believe. Like I don't think you can take people and just like force them to do things, even if you tell them, even if, let's say you give them money for whatever example. But I think the real thing of it is like to really embody the message and embody that action, and then seeing other people know it's possible within them, and then change it. Like I've literally gotten an email from somebody who on my podcast who was literally like who like went to jail for like sexual assault. And he was already on the path, but I had a podcast episode with a guest that was sort of similar, and I got an email from him after, and he was like, dude, like I don't even know what to do. Like it's crazy. Like I mean, it's back to the whole like, thinking about the just like quantifying like the impact that not even me, just like the movement that I've kind of started had is pretty insane on a lot of different levels. So yeah, I mean, I don't even know if you asked me a question or I'm just saying random things.
You know what? I think that's an excellent transition. We are coming to the top of the hour, but that is an excellent transition into a couple questions that I had about my own podcast. So I'm going to be selfish for a moment, right? So for the last 6 years, I've had a radio show, and in my 6 years, I have not made the numerical impact that you have in 365 days. So I want to know, like, what am I doing wrong, or what can I do better to make influential impact? But I do have to say that I have received feedback as far as like what you can't quantify. Like that fills my soul all day. The people that I've been able to help, the amount of people that were previous green card holders that are now current citizens because of me, the amount of people that are now politically engaged and ran for office because of me, that were not previously informed and now know about systems, and just, as far as things that I cannot quantify, I got those down packed. But as far as numbers are concerned, and not just myself, but other influencers that are listening, how do you grow? How do you grow something that, and again, like really quickly, I was a podcaster before podcasting was a thing. And so I feel, if I can be transparent, that, I paid my dues. Like I've worked, I've paid my dues, I've scrubbed the floors, I've done it all. And I'm still in the lobby. And I would like to be in an elevator.
So it's cool because I'm super thankful I did those things when I was like 11 in 2008, because that really really built up like my understanding and my skill set in terms of like how to market something online. Like that's a meta skill that I've built that's never going to leave me. And when you have that, then you can apply it to whatever you do, whether it's podcasting or a business. And so honestly, in my time here, I have probably not seen something as powerful as LinkedIn. So I think whether you have a podcast or whether you're not and you're a student or you're a politician, if you're not on LinkedIn, and of course, you don't like, this is speaking for somebody who, let's say, doesn't have, tens of millions of dollars to spend on advertising. And if you're not on LinkedIn, then you're just completely just missing out. It's by far the easiest way to organically grow. Like my podcast, nobody listened to my podcast. And then I started to just hammer LinkedIn because I talked to a friend of mine, Quentin Allums, who was at the LinkedIn local in September.
Just call me Q.
And I interviewed him, and he told me about how he's used LinkedIn. And then after that, I was like, damn, like I started using LinkedIn, and nobody, my posts would get like 15 views for like the first 6 months, but then after that, it's like immediate kind of like a channel that you can just broadcast your stuff on. And the part about it is that it's super deep into the business world. So it's like all CEOs,
so
all
that would be
makers.
my first step, is to utilize my LinkedIn, sort of like I'm probably using my Facebook.
Yeah.
So I need to like reverse engineer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's because LinkedIn is super powerful, because it's like, hey, even if you don't get 100,000 views on your post or whatever, but if like 100 people, the right 100 people see your view, it could completely change your business and your life. Like literally the first time I ever got invited to do a LinkedIn local event, which was my first time to speak ever, got invited through LinkedIn. The first time I landed like a massive like media publication where Forbes wanted to do like a 2-hour interview on my life, LinkedIn. Like LinkedIn is by far like the biggest platform for sure. And then I think it's just a matter of like just taking your massive conversations that have a ton of value in them, like this one. Like I don't even know how long we've been rolling for.
48 minutes.
Yeah, so it's like taking those 48 minutes and then breaking that down into a 60-second digestible clip that somebody could watch that has no idea who you or myself are.
So I have potentially 50 different content creations out of this 1 hour.
Technically, you have more, because you could break it down into like those different videos. You could take that information, write like an article. You could take that article and make that into a podcast episode. Like there's just so many different ways to look at it. But I think that's the most important thing, because it's like you can't. I think unless you're like Oprah, or unless you're, I don't know, Richard Branson or whoever you view as of like being influential, most random people online are not going to give you 48, 49, 50 minutes of their day unless you convince them. And you convince them by like, if you take a 1-minute clip of something dope that I said just then, and that person watches like, damn, like this kid or you or whoever, like, oh wow, that's actually pretty thought-provoking. I wonder what I'll get out when I listen to the full 50 minutes. And then they listen to that, and then they're like, oh damn, like this chick, she knows what she's doing. Let me check out this other episode that she did with this person. And then they subscribe, and then they get your, podcast every day or however often you upload. And then that kind of like, it's all like a big loop.
I get it.
Yeah.
What is your favorite interview? Either being interviewed or interviewing.
Yeah, so
wrong answer. You're supposed to say wake up with Tayla.
Sorry. Probably my favorite was when I did get interviewed on like by Forbes for 2 hours, that was like a crazy like therapeutic experience. Like I walked out. It happened towards like the end of like literally last year of 2018. Damn time. And I just sort of like walked out of that building, and I was just like, first off, I know way more about myself after walking out of that. Because again, it's like the whole creation therapy of like, the more you talk, the more you reveal things about yourself that you didn't even know. And then I walked out and I was like, like this is like the beginning of something. Because at that time, in like September of last year, I was still like on the fence of like, I was like, should I keep doing this? Should I like go to something different? But when that happened, I was like, okay, like this is a solidifier that like I got to keep going down this route, and I'm not going to stop. And this is like a time in between the sand of like just different events and shifts in my life. So yeah, that's probably my favorite time.
Who do you aspire to interview or aspire to be interviewed by?
So it's cool because so I'm gonna come out with a book next year in March that's all about like being shy and social anxiety and how to get out of that. And so literally this morning I was literally writing down like, whose shows do I want to be on to help me push this? Like in terms of PR, I came up with like, if I could be on the Joe Rogan podcast, that would be awesome. If I could be on, there's this podcast named Impact Theory by Tom Bilyeu. If I could be on that show, that'd be awesome. And also interview those people, Tom Bilyeu and Joe Rogan. And then probably last is probably Gary V. Yeah. Definitely want to be on his show. Would love for him to interview me, and also likewise. And yeah, like we're I'm speaking at this event in Las Vegas in the summer, and speaking next to Gary V. And Gary V is somebody who had a pretty deep impact on my life. Like
That's your influencer?
Yeah, like I was probably sitting in my college dorm room when I like had no idea what was going on, and like I saw a random Facebook video from him, and I was just like, what the hell is this guy talking about? And like at first I hated him, but then I sort of just thought more about it, and I was like, oh wow, this guy is actually trying to get me to reveal me to myself, and then kind of start creating content too. So it's like, yeah, I don't know where I'd be without somebody that kind of kicked off that first domino, like Gary V. Gonna interview him soon.
Mark Metry, I am Tayla Andre. Waking Up with Tayla Andre has absolutely nothing to do with the time of day that we link up, but about waking up your third eye with unorthodox conversations leading to universal consciousness. I thank you. I love you. I appreciate you. Mark, where can we find you?
If you go to my website, Mark Metry, MarkMetry.
I've been saying your name wrong this whole time, and you don't even correct me.
It's okay. It's okay. It's all good. Or if you just Google it, you'll see podcasts. You'll see, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, that's it.
And so so the name is spelt the way that I say it, but if they want to visit, they can go to and spell it out for them. MarkMetry.com. And there you can find all of his content as far as podcasts are concerned. You can learn and read about Mark and all of his amazingness. And I thank you for your time, and I look forward to your book coming out. And I am really excited. I think the most impactful moment for me is you being a philanthropist and donating to water.
Hopefully the first of many things.
Absolutely.
You're a great host.
Thank you. I hope you guys have an amazing day. TaylaAndre. Mwah.
Boom. Well done. Oh man. The sound.
Well, awesome. I definitely appreciate you. We didn't even go over any of this.
Oh, you had notes?
I had notes. I had notes that I've been working on for a while. And none of them.
Sometimes